Greetings, fellow crew members of the USS Auriga. This is Jones Cat 79, aka Crystal, my usual co-host Derek, aka Dark Neon.
Have you paying any attention today?
Yes, and we're here to cap off May-lien. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, that was a short-lived series, but first of all, uh, I started this in May because it's the anniversary of the original Alien film. As of last week, it's already now 45. And May-lien was such a fun pun because of the whole mermaid and other May stuff. I figured May-lien would be a pretty fun thing to do. And I wanted to center the core four around the original quadrilogy. Yes, I know that isn't a word, but the quadrilogy was the main focus, and that's why I wasn't too bent out of shape not getting to the other ones within the month. Don't worry, we're not gonna not cover them. We're actually gonna cover them. I mean, Derek wishes we didn't cover one of them that's on this upcoming thing, but we're gonna cover them. But that'll still continue until the countdown to Romulus, which we're probably going to call this series afterward because I'm getting really excited for that. I mean, couldn't you tell?
You're so excited you wanted to set up this event all the way back in May.
Uh huh. So yeah, we're here to talk about the final entry in the original four-run series of Alien, and that is Alien Resurrection, which is the name they gave because, if you all remember the bleak nihilistic movie that was Alien 3, to quote the Patrick meme from the Ugly Barnacle story, everyone died. The end. So you figured, well, that has to be it, right? That there's no way they could make any more films to that. Well, apparently there was an off-kilter joke either between Sigourney and one of the producers where they say, "Well, we probably have some fingernails on ice, and we'll probably just like clone from that or whatever." And I think that germ took hold when they thought we can have a chance of reviving the story because I'll say this about Resurrection right away. Of all the movies, this one has the most. It's definitely a '90s movie to it. Like, you had to have been there, but a lot of '90s movie have a lot of a feel to it. Like Alien 3, yes, came out in '92, but I would argue due to its development and inception, it still had a little bit of that '80s
Grunge.
grunge going into the '90s. So that I would call Alien Resurrection truly the '90s film of the Alien. In fact, I was joking to Derek the last time we talked. If Alien is the scary one, Aliens is the cool one, and Alien 3 is the depressing one, then Resurrection is the weird one. That's the nicest way to put it. Of course, he put it as the Schumacher film of the Alien franchise versus the other ones that came around it. Most notably Batman and Robin, which I guess that's a fair comparison if you want to make that one. But still, yes, Alien Resurrection. So I do have a little bit of a soft spot for this one, as this is one of the first Alien films I actively sought out. I do remember playing previews of this thing coming out when I was yay high, a wee lad, and I never, of course, could see it. Of course, I did see the figures all over the place because, unlike the other Alien movies, this one actually had a figure line come out during its run because the Kenner Aliens run happened after Aliens was a big hit. Alien was gonna have a run, but they thought it would be too scary for kids, so they canned it mid-run. And well, I don't know what toys you can make from Alien 3. You got rapist bald guy number A and murderer number B with a different tank top, but they're both interchangeable figures. So there was no way we were gonna make figures of that. But yes, so the this lovely little gem of a movie comes to us from a name that is probably all too familiar by people now. A guy who was up and coming and brought to life you know uh, a cheerleader with a knack for taking staking out vampires. That of course is Buffy. This is written by Joss Whedon, who Fox was really impressed with some of his early works, and I mean, they must have liked him enough that Fox Television kept him around to make all sorts of shows that spun off from his Buffyverse, Buffy, Angel, so on and so forth. And he was a comic writer and everything. But yeah, this was one of Joss Whedon's early ventures. I'm sure Whedon is, well, for a time he was known as the guy who brought the Avengers to screen before he became the guy that took over in an unfortunate circumstance in Justice League development to the point where his name is used mockingly with that thing. I won't repeat the name here because that's just a personal thing of mine. But point is, you probably know him more for that travesty, or know him more for the stuff that came out when all the big Me Too stuff was happening. So I'm guessing Josh's name is not as highly regarded as it once was back in the days of nerddom. But back in the day in the '90s, he was on the rise, and he was working very hard. And like I said, Fox was impressed enough that they gave him a shot at writing the script for bringing back Ripley and everything like that. Well, here's some development notes I didn't know, so I'm going to point this out to you. So, Whedon wrote 5 versions of Final Act. So the studio initially imagined that the film would center around a clone of a character Newt from Aliens, as the Ellen Ripley character had died at the end of Alien 3. And Whedon composed a 30-page treatment surrounding the idea before being informed that the studio, though impressed with the script, now wanted to base the story around Ripley. Now, I'm sure you're going, Newt clone would have been cool, but they're dangling the Ripley keys over here. Yes. Yeah. They said that. Yeah, so they said I didn't know that the originally they were going to go after a Newt idea before they said that let's base it around a clone of Ripley. They saw Ripley as the anchor of the series, as like the focal point. And well, can't argue with that, but still, I'm sure for a time Ripley was probably an albatross for this series. I'm sure Sigourney was proud of the character she created in '79 and was being brought back, but she said in her own words in interviews that she was kind of afraid that Ripley was almost becoming a figure of fun. Like, just every time she wakes up, there's another alien problem. It almost becomes comical when, like, how many times can this same tragedy happen to the same person before it starts becoming kind of funny?
I mean, it's there's there's always this weird fascination with people in different fandoms back then, especially in the 80s and 90s, where they think if they do not have this one particular thing, it cannot work at all.
Uh huh.
Like, to bring up something different, they think that Halloween as a franchise should work without Michael Myers, despite the fact that it could have just as easily have been a series of anthology movies that would have just been continuing on up to this very day since fucking 78.
Yes. So yeah, Sigourney herself said the reason she wanted to die in Alien 3 was she thought that it would become really a figure of fun that always looks up at monsters looking up, and there was another thing on the horizon that made her say that just sounds awful, and I don't want Ripley to have any part of it. A little crossover between the most advanced creature in the universe versus the deadliest hunter of the universe. Yeah, she did not want a. She thought that Aliens versus Predator sounded like a cash in and a doozy of an idea that would have just like cheapened both franchises. So she said, at least eject me out of this franchise before you guys try doing that. So the AVP attempts were stalling. So to keep the just like during the Freddy vs. Jason talks that kept stalling, they had to make another movie to remind people of the franchise. In Freddy vs. Jason's case, it was Jason X, and in Alien's case, it was let's do the whole cloning Ripley story idea. But yeah, like I said, Alien Resurrection was kind of it really was sort of an afterthought, to be honest. But they tried to make it work, and Joss, in fact, he was surprised that Sigourney was suddenly really interested in coming on board for this script because I thought she would see it and say, maybe she's too weird. Can you make her more approachable? Maybe give her a puppy or something. But no, but she kept telling me, no, push it in a direction. So all the quirks and weirdness you see of Ripley in this movie was purely Sigourney egging Joss on and making it even more of a different thing to play. So she really encouraged Joss in pushing the envelope with how odd to make this Ripley character because it does beg the question of when you watch this type of movie, like what truly is resurrection? What can something be brought back be the same, or is it just some imitation, some construct? I mean, and you could argue either which way about the result of that, but it does raise a lot of interesting questions. So Joss gets the green light. It brings Sigourney back into the fold, and now we have a movie in development. But here's where things get a little funny.
Well, for starters, red flag already. You call a movie, give a subtitle "Resurrection" to a movie.
And but in their defense, this is before Halloween Resurrection was a thing. But I think we can all agree of all the things with Resurrection in its title, Halloween Resurrection is probably the one that pisses us off the most.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Although it did lead to the funniest streaming moment ever, where they're kind of huddled and there's Michael suddenly appearing, and Derek, without missing a beat, says, "Hey guys, what are you whispering over?" Before starting to stab you. My sister will forever laugh at that because of that moment, man. So that's one benefit from that movie. But you're right, Resurrection is one of those weird titles where you go like, you start raising a brow, like, uh oh. Other movies would be titles like Uprising, Rise of, anything that's a Rise Up, unless you're Planet of the Apes. But mostly, if you're a Rise Of, you're a little bit of a, you know, I mean, what are the list of titles you don't want as a subtitle? Resurrection's one of them.
Uh, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
But I'm sure you'll
Uh,
be like, it'll hit you like a flood later. But point is, that's the title they're going to run with, Alien 4, Alien Resurrection. So, and it did go through several iterations. The biggest thing to give it, because they want to give each movie a different style. The biggest thing is they gave this one to French director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who had made a couple of films. The biggest film that probably got them on the radar was a movie called City of Lost Children, and he eventually would go on to become an Oscar-winning director by being the guy who directed Amelie. So it's not like he was a guy without talent, and this isn't his first rodeo. But there was a big divide over the fact that the fella himself was a Frenchman who spoke primarily French, and he could speak English, but it was like very limited. So he'd always have an interpreter. So I'm sure something's got lost in translation when trying to get things working. But I'll tell you right now, without a doubt, the look of this movie is one thing I absolutely adore. I mean, ask Derek during our viewing. I just kept on pointing out just the beautiful art direction and the set design. I kept saying something about the corridors and everything. I said I haven't seen an Alien movie rival since. He says, "Well, up until Romulus, maybe."
I mean, looking at the trailers already, it's kind of matching, if not topping, the design.
Mm-hmm. But yes, so Resurrection, as you could probably guess from the title, centers around the story of a United Systems military vessel outside of regulated space called the Auriga, conducting experiments, primarily bringing back, a clone of Ripley using frozen ice samples from Fury 161. Because I'm pretty sure when she was knocked out, they had to do blood tests to make sure she was okay. So I'm pretty sure that's how they kept the bloods on ice. As you remember, 85 mentioned that they kept the bodies on ice. So guessing that's where they got her blood. Plus, she did do a lot of bleeding in that movie, if you remember. So I'm pretty sure it was easy for them to get samples. Uh, so they successfully clone Ripley, bring her back, and manage to operate the chestburster out of her, but not without some unexpected benefits of the genetic crossing. One of them being that this construct that they grew, that probably they were just going to discard after surgery, is showing to heal rapidly and also react to things at an adult level. Basically, this thing has memories, which is a surprise because they figure that the aliens inherit a lot of stuff from their genetics to like how to survive, their survival instinct, all that stuff. So we got this Ripley that has the memories from her blood back, but she's a little bit distant. She's a little bit socially stunted. I mean, she when trying to teach her how to say the word fork, she says the first curse word that comes to mind, matching it.
Fuck.
So yeah, there's some kinks in this crossing, but um, these get compounded when her chestburster, the queen, is used to make eggs, and a pirate crew called the Betty on the ship. The Betty comes in and brings hapless hosts that were stolen from a nickel refinery team. Those poor bastards. And of course, the military does their inhumane experiments on them. However, one of the crew members, a very young, impressionable, crewmate named Call, played by Winona Ryder. Uh,
I know a rider! Quick! Somebody locked my trailer! I left my iPod in there! Ha!
yeah, I know those. I think she finally got past that reputation, thankfully, with Stranger Things. But anyway, Winona plays Call, who seems to have her own agenda separate from the crew, and is on a mission of her own, which leads her to cross paths with Ripley. who she's surprised is still alive and brought back. So she figures maybe I stopped it before this thing was taken out. We find out during the encounter with the Betty that she has enhanced strength, and also her nosebleeds can now cause the floor to sizzle. So she has a more restrained version of the acid for blood.
Yeah, even though we keep telling that this is Ripley, in the end, like let's not get around ourselves. This is pretty much Ellen Ripley has been dead and buried,
For 200
or
years at
rather
this point.
dead and sizzled for 200 years. She is no longer the same like trucker who had both had a double daughter status. She's gone, buried. What we have here is what we refer to as eight.
Yeah, who like it says Ripley eight ends up is the eighth generation of clone that they've attempted, and she is got them curious because there's a great moment where she's interacting with the head doctor, led by Doctor Wren, played by J.E. Freeman, who plays that smug bastard so well to the point where you love to hate this guy whenever you see him on screen, but not in like the fun Imperials you like to hate in like Bad Batch or something. No, this guy you're like you seethe with this guy. So you hope he gets his, and when he does gets his, he gets it in the most spectacular way when we get to that point. And you also have another doctor played by Brad Dourif as Dr. Gentleman, who it's so funny to see him be the eccentric doctor in this one because you're like, well, it's just Brad being Brad, eh?
Yeah, it's still kind of weird that he's basically all but retired from acting. Well, technically, he's still doing the voice of that little murderous, raving, redheaded bastard doll.
Uh-huh.
But aside from that, he's kind of pretty much done.
But yeah, he plays Dr. Gentleman, who's very fascinated in Ripley. He gives her the whole lowdown about how we cloned you using stuff from Fury 6-1, which he calls Fury 16 for whatever reason. And he has an odd fascination with both Ripley and the Xenos because there's a scene where they're all doing their after hour stuff, and he's like observing three xenomorphs in a pen. And he does that whole kid out of glass thing where you're kind of screwing around with it, like moving his head to see if it tracks him and everything, and kind of making out with the glass. In fact, that's one thing everybody noted about this movie is that a lot of people seem to have these strange motions that it's almost sensual in a way without being overtly sexual, but there's like subtext or something. You see it in like the way people put things in their mouths, or the way some of the leering you see from some of the characters. It's weird. And but yeah, so we got the crew of the Betty, which has Captain Frank Elgin, played by Michael Wincott, who has a hell of a voice. Every time this guy spoke, it's like smooth velvet. And you have his pilot Hillard, played by Kim Flowers, who I'll be honest, of all the Betty crew members, leaves the least of an impression to the point where you have to remember, oh wait, she gets taken out midway through the movie. Like I think her only personality trait is she flies and she really likes Elgin. So once he's taken out of the picture, you're like, well, what are you doing here? We have Joner, played by the lovable Ron Perlman, who's easily, without a doubt, the best character in this movie. If I think Derek would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's his quote he chose to use for his opening. So yeah, I mean, Ron worked with Jean Pierre Jeunet on City of Lost Children, so I'm sure he relished the fact of coming back. And Varese, played by Dominic Pignon, is the mechanic of the crew and also wheelchair bound. And there's Gary Dourdan playing Christie, who is the cool, second in command of Elgin, who, big, tough, no nonsense guy, but he also has a good head on his shoulders. Like when there's a point where they have to mistrust Ripley because some of her is still linked to the alien, he decides, well, I don't care what's up with her, how funny she is. We everybody stick together to get off the ship alive. So, and once he takes command after Elgin's untimely demise, I think you really do get a liking for Christie as long as he's around. I say that because, of course, halfway through the movie, he also buys it. In fact, there's a scene where three Betty crew members seemingly buy it within like uh, minutes of each other.
Yep.
And they along the way they pick up a stuff. They during the takeover, there's most of the Marines are killed, save for a soldier named DeStefano, played by Raymond Cruz. That's Tuco for all you Breaking Bad fans out there. And I really did like DeStefano. Uh, and yeah, the funny thing, I think the thing you'll notice about this movie right off the bat is it's not a I'm guessing because Alien 3 was so dour and so dark humored that they decided to say, well, why don't we actually be funny? There's a lot of moments you can count as being funny. Where that belongs in an Alien movie or not is up to you. I mean, you could argue, yeah, Brett and Parker were kind of funny in their movie, but in a way that made sense for, griping truck drivers and stuff like that. When you got guys over here making jokes about, like, fucking a robot or, putting battery acid in moonshine for color, it's that kind of snappy dialogue and stuff like that.
Right.
So, of course, all things go to hell in a handbasket because the idea is that Ripley took some stuff from the alien, like the strength and the acid for blood and the memories, but also the aliens took some traits from Ripley, such as more cunning, more intelligence, and a better way. Also, their armor has changed a little bit. It's a little more organic looking. On top of that, uh, they can roar now. Most of the time with their tubes, they can only like really hiss or snarl, but you got one straight up lion roaring as a victory roar after it killed someone. So you're like, well, that's a first.
I had no idea what it was in the 90s making things for. Yeah, aliens were here, had a shark roaring and Jaws Revenge. Fuck's sakes, you even made a tornado roar for God's sake.
Yeah, it did. It did. And the fire would always be exploding pumas. Like you'd hear a cougar and it was like a row every time. Like I love Mask of Zorro, but man, they did sure use the jaguar explosion a lot. 90s, everybody. But yeah, so the idea is that there's some give and take between the two, and the aliens use new tactics that you've never seen them use before. For example, there's a scene where they seemingly intentionally flood a cooling tank, and they have to go through this area to get to the edge of the ship. And this is probably the most intense scene in the movie. They have to swim underwater, and this was back in the day where, I mean, it's still dangerous now, but this was back in the day where underwater photography is still a bit of a dicey thing, even at the water tanks. I mean, the terror and strain you see on their faces is probably not a whole lot of acting involved. And the aliens can swim now, and that's something we've never really seen them do. Like we've kind of got hints that they can swim thanks to the whole scene with the aliens that captured Newt in Aliens, but this one, yeah, these guys. It also gives us a first for this series, digital aliens, which I think you could argue if they're integrated well or if they, aged a bit. I think your mileage will vary depending on person to person. Derek did agree they looked a little more better composited into this movie versus the poor rod puppet in Alien 3. Like, he could not.
They could not. All you had to do was just do a simple color correction. But you couldn't even do that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Yeah, I think with the whole sequence with the from the swimming to the facehugger trap to the climb is all one well done intense action sequence. But I think that's where some people's issues draw from this movie, especially with ever since Aliens, is that this series started off as a straight up horror series, and over time it kind of evolved into action thrillers, which is fine and all, but you could also argue that there's a lot of action set pieces in Resurrection, probably to match with that of Aliens, but it tries to go for horror. But you could argue the horror stuff comes from the off-kilter abstract stuff. Like there's a sequence where they find a whole lab full of aborted Ripley clones, and that leads to a lot of pathos and a lot of like really messed up stuff happen here. And at the same time, you got Ron Perlman cracking wise of like, I don't get it. It's a fucking waste of ammo. Must be a chick thing, stuff like that. Like that's why I decided to say this movie has a little bit of an identity crisis, because it not only with the characters, like with this, there's a sequence that Derek keeps honing in on where Call visits Ripley and herself, intending to kill her, but she sees that the thing has already been brought out, and she says like, "Well, who are you then?" She says her whole name, Ellen Ripley Memories, and stuff like that. When she puts out, Ellen Ripley died a long time ago, but you're not her. So she's wondering, is what am I? And she says how she can still feel the things. She says they took the things out of you, right? So well, it's still in my head, in my mind. So she is inextricably linked to the aliens in this one. Like there's a scene where like the aforementioned victory kill where the alien roars in victory. She could hear it echoing through the hall, and she cracks like almost proud smile. And she does say a few off kilter things, like when referring to the alien, the chestburster queen, she refers to it as, "You talking about my baby?" So I'd argue though that the more the movie goes on, the more some of the more
Actually, now that I think about it, this just came to me. I wonder if that had anything to do with being a sort of a nod to Metroid at the time, because Metroid was based on and inspired by the Alien movies, and especially Aliens.
yes,
But the fact that we had Super Metroid, let's see, timing wise, Resurrection is 97, Super Metroid would be
93,
94.
yeah, 94.
Yep, that seems to be about right.
Uh,
By that point, Samus had essentially gained a little attachment of sorts, the baby
That's an
Metroid.
interesting point. As another interesting point is the fact that Ripley and the alien, once former enemies, now have bonded on a deeper cellular level. The same thing happened in Metroid 4, Metroid Fusion, when the X attacked her, and the only way to save her was to inject her DNA with Metroid DNA to combat it. So she said, "Me and the species that I had fought against are now inextricably one." So that's another trait. Only I'm pretty sure Samus didn't get acid for blood, as far as I know.
No, she had like the Chozo like hybridization.
Oh, she had that before. Yeah, even before Metroid Fusion, she had the Chozo DNA in her to help her survive her suit and survive on SR 388, and now she's got the Metroid stuff. So she's a hodgepodge salad bowl of Metroid, human, and Chozo DNA. Anyway, nice little side tangent, but yeah. Um, like I mentioned, that whole sequence with the water is just one tense moment. It's probably the only scene we could argue is super scary because, well, who doesn't have a fear of drowning? And it really does bring it to life. Like I made fun of Hillard having no little to no character trait, but at least you can remember how she dies when she gets grabbed by the alien and dragged to a watery grave. When they go up the ladder, there's a point where that duplicitous Dr. Wren ends up, asking Call for a pistol and turns on her by shooting her in the chest. Where you go, "Oh, we just killed our most marketable star. Huh, how about that?" And after losing Christie, they go up to the top to find the door opening, and surprise is that it's actually, once again, Call, soaking wet, had saved them. And then we find out the truth that, well, Call is actually an android. She has the little milky white fluid and everything. Looking a little more milkier than usual, I might add. But also, this is probably not by design, but it's just a funny accident that happened. That for a while, the droids of Alien were following an alphabetical code. Because you had Ash, A, Bishop, B, and now Call, C. And then Prometheus made D, David. Covenant ended up throwing a wrench in that, but if they had just had a name like Franklin or something, or Francis, I'm pretty sure you could keep the ABCD. No, it had to be an E name, like Edward or something. Eric, Edward, I don't know. But point is, for a while, the droids all had like a conventional naming convention, and then Covenant kind of came and changed that. Uh, we find out in this history is a little more expanded lore. Because it does attempt to further the story, by being 200 years later and stuff. You have more advanced technology, like cloning technology, laser weapons, the like. You have more advanced like the droids are more advanced because we find out that she's a second generation android. A robot designed by other robots that was supposed to revitalize the synthetic industry, but ended up burying it. So the government had to order a recall that ended up killing a lot of them. So saying that only a few Autons survived the recall was a big deal. In fact, I loved that's one character moment I love where DeStefano just geeks out about the fact that seeing her is is great. Oh, another character I forgot to bring up. Not I'm going back to it because I'm all over the place. Sorry. Is Leland Orsner as Purvis, one of those poor unfortunate saps that was in the tubes that the Betty stole. They were on their way to a nickel refinery in Zaram, and the first thing he sees when he wakes up is a facehugger. But for some reason, his chest burster has a little bit of a stunted growth because it hasn't quite bursted out like the other ones have. But it does lead to a memorable sequence where they find him. They think, okay, you're coming with us, and Ripley kind of does her little sniff thing and says, "Hey, guess what? He's got one inside him." And they're not telling him shit. So there's this great moment where they're all arguing about ways to, we could save him. No, we could do surgery. No, maybe we can kill him. Maybe we could do a quick and painless. And he's the whole time he's just the poor guy is asking desperately what's inside him, to the point where he yells out, "What's in fucking inside me?" And Ripley breaks it to him straight by saying, "Listen, these guys stole your tube. They gave you to this dude. He put an alien in your chest, and you're gonna die." I just love that no nonsense way she describes it to him.
At least at this point, she's pretty much seen this whole rigmarole so many times. It's routine at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even, especially with 8 here, that it's like wired in her mind that like, no, this seems kind of normal and it should be. Whatever.
And then yeah, so at this point she finds Purvis after like I says during a point she senses something inside the one of the rooms where Brand is very insistent she don't go see. And here you do see all the trouble it took to get to Ripley. You see all the aborted clones. You got one that looks like a embryo fetus, but it has like pipes coming out of its back, or another one that looks like almost like a baby, but it's got like the alien tail. You got some with jaws coming out of the side of their cheeks, and probably the most memorable clone for people, number 5, the clone that it pretty much looks like a human with alien features, like the sharp teeth and the no eyes and everything, tubes in the back. There's and here's the thing that always baffled both me and Derek. And I don't know if there's a writing reason for this, but they find number 7 still alive, asking for a mercy kill, and on top of that has a slice on her chest. So Derek asked me, did they pull something out of this malformed clone?
I mean, it's the same incision made to 8, so
Mm-hmm.
clearly they were like really close. Like, oh, who cares about the body? All it cares about what matters is the embryo.
Mm-hmm.
And probably as soon as they incise to say yes, yes, and frog feet. God damn it! Alright, dump it with the rest.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that scene where she finds the clone, I think that is where more of the true Ripley from before starts to manifest in Ripley 8, because just the way she uses the flamethrower on this thing, and just the amount of pain in that face. Like, I told this to Derek, no matter what alien movie you're watching, whenever Sigourney's a part of it, she commits 110% to it. So even if the script is beyond ludicrous, or even if the tone is beyond dour, she's still giving it her all, like if she's acting with Jim or acting with Ridley. So that's one positive you can give Resurrection, even if you think it's weird or bad. You can say, well, at least Sigourney's having fun with it, and she's really making it count. Also, Sigourney also does play the clone on the table, asking "Kill me," which the original script called for her to have a metal teeth and the tongue kind of like malformed, but still being able to emote "Kill me." But I think they figured the face, having this normal face but having this distended body, was enough to say, yeah, that poor thing should not have been kept alive as long as it has been.
I think the one that always gets my eyebrow raised is seeing what I assume is number 5, which is straight up Ripley, but with having an alien face, like no eyes, teeth, the whole works.
Mm-hmm. Makes you wonder what would that thing have been like had they allowed it to mature and get out of the tank. Would it even be able to talk, or would it just be all instinct and viciousness? If anything, you're gonna laugh at this. I think the Ripley 5 clone uh, bears a lot of resemblance to me of the humanoids at the end of the Shin Godzilla on the tail. Now that you think about it, and you're probably thinking,
Oh dear.
how did I know he was gonna go there?
Also, just a quick aside: when the hell are we gonna get Godzilla -1 on home media?
It's coming.
Like, the most I see, recent thing I see is say, "Oh, they're putting it out streaming, yay!" on Netflix. Oh,
In Japan too. Only in Japan at the moment. But I'm pretty sure they got a wide release coming down the line. So I think if you ask me, I think it's after that point from the flamethrower that Ripley starts gaining more traits that make her more our Ripley than some vague impression of her, because she kind of just she like they mentioned she has emotional autism when they're talking about her diagnosis. She recognizes stuff, but they kept saying she has something to growth and emotional autism, and you can kind of see her kind of play Ripley like if she was on the spectrum. But she still is capable of the same feelings as Ripley: pain, remorse, joy, sadness, humor. I mean, there's I just love that little knowing smile she gave when she kills the alien to save the Betty crew after Elgin dies, and Call's just all like, "Well, what the fuck, man?" And she's all like, "Was it everything you ever hoped for?" And I love it when Chrissy says, "I don't care what she is, she stays," and Ripley does a little joke of like she kind of smiles and shrugs her shoulders like, "Guess you're stuck with me, Call." Although, me and Derek picked up on this. There seemed to be some sort of strange chemistry bonding between Call and Ripley that sometimes would feel like, you
I
know,
ship it.
yeah, like that. Sometimes it feels like it'd be mother to daughter, and also almost a little more intimate than that, because she does this little caressing of the hair thing sometimes. And one scene I love is when she's offering to kill her, but she just takes the knife and puts it to her own palm just so that doesn't really affect her. And on top of that, the acid starts eating away at the knife to make you go like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
But
but it's
mm,
like, okay. Quick, double quick aside. So, I think this is the first time they let Sigourney be her full height in any movie, because other times they're like, well, let's kind of like demur her down a little bit, because otherwise she looked like she'd be towering the freaking xenomorphs.
actually, in most cases, she did. Like, she's taller than the guy who plays the alien, Tom, without the suit. That the head adds like more inches and stuff.
Yeah, but here it's like, well, then she's kind of supposed to be an imperfect clone, so it's like, whatever. Let's just go with it.
Because you see her standing eye to eye with Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman's no short guy either. I mean, you see him tower over a couple of soldiers when the soldiers try to ask him to like do the security check and everything like that. And
Especially during that basketball court scene, which, yes, it's true, people. She did actually make the behind her nothing but net shot. That wasn't an edit. That wasn't like, oh, she tosses a basketball, somebody caught it, and someone tossed it in a perfectly
or a
like
CG ball or whatever.
No, that was a legit, like, boom goes the dynamite, like, backhand shot.
It was,
And the funny thing is, it was so good that they had to quickly edit the shot to look at Ron Perlman's character, because if they had kept the shot unedited, you would have heard Ron shout out of character, "Holy shit!"
he got smile and just super energy, and they thought Ron basically like they don't want to redo the shot, so that's why you get that sudden cut to Jonah that looks like a different pickup shot because. Like you're right. You go to the behind the scenes featurette, you'll see the unedited version, and you get to see Ron Perlman lose his shit. And he even mentions, I almost ruined that whole shot because I just couldn't contain myself. He admitted.
Anyways, back to the duo.
Yeah.
So with Ellen being able to be like her full tall Sigourney Weaver self, besides this short Winona Ryder. It's kind of adorable a little bit. It's like you got the big girl and the small girl.
Oh, imagine Ripley and Call doing the "she wants to order" meme. Although I imagine that being Ripley being the one who wants to order, and Call has this look on her face of, "Listen, she wants to order." Yeah, and I remember, yeah, people being a little bit, huh, with Winona's portrayal in this movie, but I thought she played it well because remember, as Ripley said when she figured out she's a robot, I should have figured it out. No human is that humane. That she kind of overcompensates with her compassion, trying to be human. Like, then again, a lot of people on the crew didn't pick up that she was a robot.
Or it's just like mind your p's and q's, essentially.
I still love that bit though with he's where Jonah mentions I thought droids are supposed to be all logical and shit, but you're just a big old psycho. But that's where they mention she's an autoton, where they're programmed with different emotions and different ways of helping people. As she puts it, the reason she cared about saving humanity and the crew of the Betty, despite their underhanded deeds, is because, as she puts it, she's programmed to. Which Ripley mocks and says, "You're programmed to be an asshole. You're the new asshole breed that they're trying to get out there." But yeah, but like I said, I think Ripley, the call helps Ripley connect with the distant strands of humanity she has in her because I think they think they were trying to hint that she could go either way, that she could be assisting our humans, or also totally suddenly assisting all the xenomorphs and everything. And she is torn between both worlds because there's a great bit where they decide they're going to destroy the ship by crashing it, and they gotta make a bigger rush toward the home ship, the Betty, but she stops because she can feel the hive nearby, and also feel that the queen is in pain. Which is I love that emotive moment for some reason. It just it gets to me. So we do find out that the queen has indeed mutated further, where because of Ripley's DNA mixed with her, she added a second cell cycle where she is now pregnant rather than laying an egg. She actually has a distended womb, which is quite a Giger-esque visual, I might add. And this is where you either get the most memorable part, where it's either the most memorable part you like, or the most memorable part that gives you the willies like, what were they thinking? And this is where we get to the newborn hybrid alien.
Yeah. So this newborn, this literally grows full size straight out of the queen's womb. Apparently, she has a womb now. That's new.
Mm-hmm. And this thing,
And
like, where to begin with this thing, huh?
probably the eyes, because it's just like, stare at your souls, man.
But yeah, I mean, just like I said, the people thought in a way that kind of makes the alien scarier. That now you know where it's looking, whereas before, you had this whole where is it like? According to Giger, when he designed the first alien, I think it's scary that it has no eyes because you cannot tell where the monster is looking, as he put it. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and actually bring up a picture of this guy because I don't think our describing it can do it any justice. It's just, it's like a very fleshy alien, like as Derek called it, a distended pumpkin head, knockoff. Uh, which is funny because the guys who made Pumpkinhead actually, the Pumpkinhead sequels actually, made the newborn. And I'm getting a picture right now just because I want to. There, I think that pretty much gives it what I wanted. Alright, so I should be putting it on the screen. And this is what we're dealing with, people. Oops. Well, I mean, you can kind of see it on the thumbnail, but you really gotta see the full body of this of this thing, because it is a doozy. There it is. Alright. So, I think that's actually concept art of it, but Yeah, that's pretty much close to the general thing. Is that yeah, you got this lanky thing with a distended belly and like the whole folds and everything, but it's got this face like the face you're seeing on the poster right now, and it was one of their most advanced hydraulics at the time, the ADI crew that made the effects for this creature, and it's so funny because it has all these different uh, expressions. It goes from like curious to like you know,
Piss the fuck off.
and when it's pissed where you're like, you do not actually. To quote John Tron, "Whoa, how much money can I pay you not to look at me like that again?" Basically, I mean that's the best way to describe this thing. And but I told Derek, I know it's a me thing, but every now and then I'll find something that's meant to be, you know, H.P. Lovecraft,
Disgusting, horrible, like abomination to all of mankind.
and I just go, "Aw." Like there's another picture of it right there of the alien sizing up the queen and deciding you're not my mama. But as Derek points out, sometimes kids they gravitate a little more toward the grandparent than they do the parent.
It skips a generation.
Yeah, but this is probably the most original thing brought to this movie is the newborn, and you either love him or you hate him. Hmm. But
It's
man,
just it. As soon as the newborn appears, the movie just stops being an alien movie at that point. It just becomes a, a 90s sci-fi movie that's trying to capitalize off an alien.
yeah.
If that makes any sense. And in the middle of it, you literally got the cast of Alien Resurrection going like, "What the fuck is even happening here?"
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I jokingly call the Betty crew basically Joss's audition for Firefly because that's probably what a lot of the crew members remind. In fact, you feel like they have a history when you first meet up with them when they stuff like just like the calling maneuver or I shipped off with this guy, so you really get an impression that oh yeah these guys have been on many adventures. Like if this was a movie serial, this would be like one of their many episodes. And the Betty itself is such a beautifully designed ship, and it has this cute nose art. so, but yeah, we get to the newborn, and this thing is all levels of disturbing, like it should be. But there's a great bit where it does gravitate more toward Ripley. And somehow it finds its way aboard the Betty after Ripley does a mad dash for it, and you know, it's trying to go after calls, so I'm guessing it's just the alien thing just to hate androids. I guess we know where the aliens stand when it comes to the AI debate. No. Nay. But yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, Ren is a swarmy asshole that is like trying to get his way off the ship to save it because the ship has a fallback that once anything wrong happens, they'd send the ship back to Earth. Well, the
But just fine considering the fact that the Earth at this point is basically kind of a piece of shit.
as Joner puts it, yeah.
So basically, current day, I guess.
It's funny how Joner, when he points out that we're heading back to Earth, he's like, Earth? I'd rather stay here with the things, he jokes.
Who knows? Maybe in this universe, the Fallout actually happened.
Mm, yeah. So, there's a great moment, yeah, where Ren is trying to get to the Betty almost, and Call, finally being revealed to be an android, is taken to a chapel where she can, interface with the ship, and she can't blow it, so she changes direction to crash it. And there's a bit where she shuts off the door, telling him that the father computer system is dead and is going to send all aliens in his direction just to be, be funny. Or even Ripley's like, wow, you got a mean streak. I like that. Oh, I think we should also mention, since he's such a minor character, but I should bring it up. Dan Hayda as General Perez is such a almost cartoonish general because he does all these over the top expressions. Like when they're watching the Ripley react to the pictures and stuff, he starts like moving his head side to side and yelling out, "Wait a second, this thing has memories. Why does it have memories?" Like, I think Perez was meant to be like a cigar chewing, General Ross type, but he's rather comical. I mean, to the point where even his death is kind of a played for a laugh, kind of, because there's a part where he gets a great moment where the Marines are trying to evacuate. One of the lifeboats gets flooded with an alien, and just it turns everybody in there into mincemeat pie. Like you just see blood and offal flying all over the windows. So he decides to throw in a grenade, which I always love that bit with the grenade for some reason. It was just he rolls it down the gantry and it goes in right before the door closes, and he takes his time to like salute his men before blowing them up, and an alien takes a chunk out of his head, and maybe
Of
ripping up.
course, literally takes the time to reach back and take a piece of his brain matter and just hold it up to his face to see it.
Like
I sort of got like, did this movie seriously just like take a page from Peter Jackson's Bad Taste?
possibly.
Except no, like, even in that, in Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, it happens to the main character, but he manages to put all of his gray matter in and just duct tape his back of his head shut.
Yeah. Now I bring up Perez now because of what happens next. Because the newborn does go on the ship and he does kill the one likable Marine, DeStefano. In fact, I like how even DeStefano looks for a second to look at the alien. Like he's thinking like, what in the bloody hell am I looking at before it grabs his head and squishes it like a grape. And Ripley does realize that the newborn is on board and decides to like play nice with it. Like there's a bit where it's trying to rip apart Call by like messing with her gunshot wound. And when Ripley says put it down, it has a look on his face like, oh crap, I've been caught with my hand in the cookie jar. Like they were able to emote it that way. I thought that's such a great character moment. So I got a little something to show you real quick. So this is probably the most other memorable thing about the newborn besides how it was created. It was also how it dies. Ripley kind of like does. We made a joke that in one of some of Sigourney's stipulations about being an alien in this upcoming Alien movie is she wants to at one of these point screw an alien in one of these things. I think the closest we get to that is the weird thing she does with the newborn in this scene, where she's kind of like caressing the back of the head and putting her hand in its mouth and everything. So she takes some of her acid blood and throws it at the window behind the newborn, and the uh, the hole opens up and the poor thing gets stuck to it. But it gets worse. The pull of the gravity is so strong it tears a hole in the skin, and then everything inside starts coming out before getting slooped out, and it is over the top and gory and almost comical. But at the same time, you can't help but feel bad because you can actually hear the creature yelling out. The subtitles are actually saying oh no," as it's getting ripped to shreds by gravity out there.
Poor bastard got taken out the same way as the Goldfinger.
And as we all remember, that was actually how Ridley at one point wanted to kill Lambert. If you remember way back when in May-lien 1. Well, I mentioned General Perez before this because originally there's a scene earlier in the movie where the Betty crew comes on board and he has them all weapons check. And the guy's like, what's the matter? You're afraid the six of us are going to hijack your military ship? He says, just a concern that none one of your asshole crew members gets drunk and puts a bullet in the hull. Well, at one point, he was supposed to be killed by acid blood landing on the hull, and he gets sucked out through a tiny keyhole. And there's footage that exists of them running tests for this death, but both the effects makers and the director thought, that's kind of too spectacular a death to give to such a minor character, because after he gets the head bite, he fucks off. We don't even get no reference to him ever again. So they figured they'd save the demise for the newborn, and I guess it ended up working out well, rather. So let me see if I could actually pull it up real quick. I'm gonna mute it so it's not like if there's any copyrightable music or not. But I think I could actually pull up the test footage, and it's actually quite impressive how they managed to get that to work. Let me see. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay, good. I got it. Okay. So I'm gonna send it to you via YouTube as well on Discord real quick because you actually really do got to see this. I think. All right. Sending it via there. Going to hit play on here. All right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Three, two, one, play. So let me see if this is showing up on the screen as intended. Oh yeah, it's showing. It's showing. So yeah, this is actually on the ADI channel, but you get to see them actually mock working out the clay of how this guy was gonna get like sucked out his own asshole basically. And but they're right. It is rather spectacular death for such a minor character. If anything, I think if you were going to give any one human character that death, you would have given it to Ren, the head doctor.
Yeah, except that he gets a pretty awesome death too.
Yeah, so I'll mention this while this is going on. Ren's death is pretty funny in that he of course infected these poor colonists with no remorse. So when one of them is still alive, they're gonna like put purpose on ice to save him. He gets shot, and he starts talking about how he's gonna hold a call hostage and everything. And probably the most comical bit is as Ren and Stefano are arguing with the doctor. Purvis starts chest bursting. There was a few false alarms earlier in the movie, like where they're trying to open a door and he's like coughing, and they said they're gonna like blast his head. He said, "I'm okay." So this time, Ren shoots him. He starts out of nowhere, turns into a freaking berserker zombie because he's just taking shots and just beating the utter shit out of him. Or even Derek's all like, "Okay, I know he's mad, but where did this come from?" The guy pretty much turned into the Incredible Hulk with how bad he was beating the crap out of the Doctor in his death throes. Look, yeah, right here you can see the expression on the animatronic when they were going to do it, and had they kept this in the movie, it probably would have upped the rating if they kept the shots lingering.
What, up to an NC-17?
Well, yeah, this bit with the skull that this is always because just like the newborn, that was also going to be the way that everything that's still left on the face goes out the eye hole, just like the poor newborn. Like here's the test of that right there. And it also, this was one of the last Alien movies. No, not the last. They actually worked on two more after this. Thankfully, they managed to continue work on the AVP franchise. But yeah, this was really them in their heyday right here. All the testing and all the experimenting and stuff. But yeah, so Purvis is beating the crap out of Dr. Rand, and then he holds his head to his chest.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a good effect right there, yeah. Like, had they kept that, yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, they got away with the alien because, well, it's an alien.
Oh, that's nasty.
Right there, that's how it would have done it had they kept it. So I thought I'd show that off. Like, but like they said, that is too spectacular a death to give to such a minor character. Because yeah, the general, who's gonna say, "Oh, General Perez, that guy was my favorite guy."
Well, I mean, if you were to think about it, he would be remembered mostly due to the death.
Yeah, but I mean, his death as is memorable. He's the guy that pulls out his own head, but when you compare that to what he could have gotten, it is rather lackluster. Well, so that's another thing about this movie is its Frenchness in terms of its dark humor and its not afraid to get risque with things. Like I said, everybody seems to do these weird caressing moments. There's a strange moment where I call it like Gone with the Wind, but with the Gone with the Wind poster, but it's Ripley being taken back to the hive. Oh, that's another big thing from this movie, an iconic image where it's called the Viper Pit, where Ripley gets dragged under and is surrounded in a bed of aliens, where you don't know where the tail ends or the head begins. Let me see. Yeah, like, but I gotta admit, it is one of the more Giger-esque images in the series. I mean, like most of the books I know, they've had that image. But yeah, so the newborn is death is funny because it was meant to be originally it was meant to the climax of the movie was supposed to take place on Earth, where they would newborn had stolen away, they would chase it, and eventually they would kill it with a piece of farming equipment to show it like a big backhoe or whatever, to like or plow or something like that to like show that, you know, even at its most basic and primitive, that can still take out the alien. But there's the Viper pit right there where she's in a sea of venom of aliens. Uh, so yeah, the but yeah, I guess they figured a climax on Earth would have been too expensive at that point, and they were running under over budget and under time. So they took it out on the Betty with that spectacular death sequence of the poor thing just being ripped to shreds, just like the general right there. And again, you can't help but feel a little bit of pity for it. In fact, in the novelization that they made for this, they elaborate on both the thoughts of Ripley and the newborn. Ripley's feeling a strong sense of sadness because even though this thing tried to kill her and it's an abomination, there's still some kinship to it. I mean, in some ways, it reminded her of her daughter Amanda. She said, like, there's a part when it points out that it had brown eyes like hers, and she said in her mind, Amy had eyes like mine too. And during the scene with the getting ripped apart, the newborn is asking, "Why, mommy? Why?" But then asking later, "Just kill. It hurts so bad. Just kill me, mommy, kill me." Before it gets finally pulled out its its own skull. So yeah, that's I think that's a little bit of John Pierre Genet's odd sensibilities. So I think it helps that it lead to a memorable look and a memorable demise. And another part of the French humor is as the ship is about to crash into the African coast, the father ship is counting down about time to impact, and at the end of the countdown it goes "Thank you" while you have a close up of an alien there. Something about that just always made me laugh. Like, um, so we do get this great bit at the very end where Ripley and Call see atmosphere for the first time. And in a way, even though Ripley's from Earth, this is the first time this eight has ever been to the planet. So when Call asks, well, what happens next? Where do we go from here? And she goes, well, to be honest, I'm a stranger here myself. But in a way, Ripley has finally found her way home because you could argue, yeah, she came home in Aliens, but she still was never home because her mind was still thinking back to the alien menace that existed out there on LE-426. So I think Tom Woodruff Jr. put it how he feels it's a little bittersweet and almost like this is someone who's been trying to get home for 200 plus years, having been cloned and everything like that, and she's right there. She's on the cusp of coming home, and we decided to end it there. He's all like, he knew there was another climax filmed on Earth where they did film that plate where Call and Ripley sit in the ruins of a desiccated Paris. Well, the same dialogue plays with the whole like it's beautiful. Where do we go from here? And that would have been the end of the adventures of Ripley right there. Now, one thing I didn't mention at this point, I feel like I kind of feel remiss to neglect to mention in any of the other movies is all the Alien movies have such interesting, unique scores, and I think it's without a stretch of saying that Alien Resurrection is probably my most favorite of the scores because it has this rising tone motif that is haunting but beautiful, but also like an inverse of itself, much like the Ripley clone herself. So, I think it's the perfect music for this movie. But the composer John Frizzell also would do things like he took like a rubber band ball and would rub it against a cymbal, and it made like this weird little like screeching groan that they would use at points in the soundtrack, or they would use like a guitar pick to make like these strange guitar riffs to be like the scene where Ripley sees the number 5 clone with the messed up alien head to emphasize the horror. So he admitted the one track that took him like 4 weeks to make and it just made him go under the covers and cry when the director mentioned, yeah, this doesn't work, is the they swim sequence, because he put like a lot of fury and rawness into the draft, and he says like, I show him the first thing and he tells me in his French way, it does not work for me. I think I went under the covers and cried for a week after that. He said, so he came back with another draft of the song that ended up using. But yeah, I love his compositions, and he even at points brings back Jerry Goldsmith's motifs. Like at the very beginning, when you see the Ripley clone, they play the original hallway motif from Alien, like the little flutes going doot 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 doot. They actually play that when we get the Ripley clone first revealed for the first time. Aliens had an intense, bombastic, militaristic score. James Horner didn't have much to shoot against, so he kind of made his own tracks and was a little bit miffed when Cameron would move them around and use them and not in their whole pieces. So that he thought he would never be able to work with Jim again, given how his hands-on direct attitude is just not a fit for Horner. And he thankfully they buried the hatchet and they were able to work together again for Titanic, and later teamed up for Avatar, which was his last collaboration with Jim before his untimely passing. Um, Goldsmith also was at ends with Ridley and Terry Rawlings, mostly because Terry Rawlings bought a lot of music from Goldsmith's catalog and put it in as a temporary score. But some of those temporary scores would still stay in the final movie, even though he worked his ass off composing new songs. They would just reuse some of his old songs to the point where he got letters from his colleagues saying, "Hey, are you starting to repeat yourself a little?" When he goes, it wasn't his choice, but yeah, like for example, the song that plays when the acid burns through the floor for the first time is from his biography pick for Freud. So there was some tension there, and of course, like I mentioned, Elliot Goldenthal's modern, bombastic, tragic score for Alien 3 is it has moments of flourish that remind me of like Batman Forever, given that he did that one too. And it also has great sadness. Like Lento has a great choir sadness motif that's played during the Clemens' story, and of course the main adagio, the track that plays when Ripley sacrifices herself, is one of the all-time great Alien songs. And like even though it's bittersweet that she kills herself, it still ends on a kind of triumphant note. It's sad but triumphant. That's the best way to describe adagio. And Resurrection, I think, kind of fits in with that as well. In fact, if I had to say the only Alien movie I'd say had the most like music to me, probably Alien versus Predator, which it hurts me to say because I know what that one was trying to do. But we'll get to that when we get to that eventually. Hint, hint. Um, but that's the funny thing is I don't know if Fox ever intended to make even more sequels after Resurrection, but given how it was received and given its box office was okay, but I think their priorities were more on getting Alien vs Predator off the ground. And after Freddy vs Jason and a few other versus movies took off, they figured, yeah, we got to cash in on the versus craze. Um, so Ripley's adventure would seemingly end with this one. However, there are a few off-canon sources that kind of continue the story. One of them being, of all things, an Aliens versus Predator versus Terminator comic, where Skynet somehow still happened in this timeline, but also aliens and predators are in the hunt, and Ripley Eight's in the mix, and I believe she perishes in that comic trying to stop them all at the same time as the final sacrificial blow. So Ripley ends her story in that manner, but the canonness of that is dubious at best. However, there is another book that was released very recently. During the Titan press days, they have released a few Alien books called like Alien DNA War and stuff like that. But they made a book called Alien Original Sin, which furthers the adventures of the Betty crew and Ripley 8 as they run into yet another alien incursion. Now, I'm sure they would have actually run into true, actual aliens because, as we mentioned before, the aliens in this movie are a little different because of the human hybrid crossing. And when they were making the newborn, the producers, the effects guys were very conscious not to make it look like Syl from Species, just an alien with a face. So that's what we got that look. I like to describe the newborn as being a mixture of the big chap and humanness and everything like that. Anyway, yeah. So You could argue that it went out. In fact, when it came out, Joss did admit he was not a fan of how it was filmed because of the language divide. Things that were meant to be humorous were played dead serious, and things that were meant to be dead serious were played off as laughs. He said the interpretation and line reading was not what he had intended when writing it. So, Joss himself was like, "Yeah, it didn't quite. They didn't quite shoot it how I would have shot it." And he went on to do Angel and Firefly and all this other stuff and become a big time name before eventually capping his career with the Avengers. And that was probably the highlight of his career before everything started going on a downward decline. And let me see. But everybody does admit, whether it's good or bad, um, it was you know everyone agreed that Sigourney was the highlight of this movie. And I'm sure even Derek can attest to that. Even though he keeps calling her eight, her performance still does, you know, carry this movie for the most part. Her and Winona. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Did I did I go on too long? Um, oops. Oh, hold on for just a moment, guys. Anyway, one thing I gotta point out that has been a thing throughout the Alien movies that has been a point of contention with one individual involved is H.R. Giger, who was never always given credit for his work on designing the whole reason this franchise exists. So he was at least pleased with Resurrection and how it utilized his designs. Well, initially, apparently there's a letter where he wrote that he built his creatures to be beautiful and aesthetic because this thing's just a monster. It's a third. He basically said, which some fans might agree with his assertion, but he always had a struggle of getting his name on this thing to the point that all the home releases now have a Alien designed by H.R. Giger credit that wasn't there when it first ran. So at that point, I think he'd been frustrated with Fox after that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the last time they ever had any real collaboration. I don't blame him. His Fox is Fox. So Resurrection ended up coming out, and it didn't leave that much of a groove for people. They thought it was. Some people said it was better than Alien 3 because in that it was at least had some thing to enjoy versus the dourness of Alien 3. But others were like, "Is this really how we're gonna go out with our character and everything like that?" Yeah. So during our viewing, what were your thoughts on Resurrection after seeing it for this whole thing?
Pissed off, angry. Like, oh wait, no, that was the whole experience of trying to watch it with you.
Oh yeah. Now this has nothing to do with the movie itself, but there's a weird little thing. Sony. This is a little bone picked up for you guys. Uh, we both have PS5s, and for the most part, been able to watch our streaming services and our disc without any issue. Save for Alien 3 and Resurrection, because for whatever reason, it would do this weird thing where it would start the sequence, it would go to the FBI warning scene, and then it would just stay frozen on black for way too long a time. You'd restart the disc, put it in, put it out. It would do the same thing. You would get as far as the menu, and then you would just jump back to that black screen with no way of getting in or out of it. No idea why it only did that with because we did Alien and Aliens, no issue. Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, I think Derek half joke, half pissed off says maybe it knows it's playing crap or whatever.
I mean, it has to. Why else would it react to 3 or 4? Because like these are, well, it's questionable if they're the exact same sets, but they're essentially the same like disc makes.
Yeah. Now, if it does this with those guys, you think it's going to explode when AVPR goes inside it? But yeah, we had to. He had to watch it on another player, and I had to watch it on Xbox just to even get it, going. Because I think I was able to get it to work on Sony once, but I don't know why it did that with this set. Because my disc come from the same disc that was repackaged from the Alien Anthology set. So, Sony, get your shit in order if this is gonna keep happening. And I think Derek's like, oh, I'm sorry, this 4K player is being a 4K player and saying, nah, why are you giving me this Blu-ray plebeian crap? Give me the 4K. Like, but I don't have the 4K Resurrection because it doesn't exist.
I highly doubt it'll ever exist.
Yeah, I'll give it that. So, fan reception has always been you either really like it because it's weird or unusual, tries to do something different, or you really hate it because you feel like it's like a parody of the franchise at this point. So, and you got some in the middle who are like, yeah, it's not the best thing, but it's not the worst. It's definitely no Alien 3 or Requiem, depending on who you ask. Although there are some people who say they find Requiem more watchable than Resurrection. You're going, are you blind?
Or it's probably the movie that's being blind.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think I've gone on long enough about this one. It does end Sigourney's tenure with the movie as for the time being. She's like pushing almost 70, but she's still looking good for her age. We don't know if she'll ever return to the world of Ellen Ripley, but maybe for now it's the best that the true Ripley passed away on 161, and 8 gets to live the rest of her days learning what it means to be human. So I guess that's not a bad end for the character.
She gets to shack up with Call. That's my headcanon.
That's a win. That's a win. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I rambled on enough about this, but this one's always been a personal favorite of mine, even with its guilty pleasure status. Hell, like I said, it's one of the few Alien movies that Doug Walker reviewed as a nostalgia critic, and it was an okay review.
Yeah.
Although, one other thing to mention before we go is the fact that there's a fun little message at the end of the tape that says, play the PlayStation game. And I actually did own the PlayStation game. What's funny is that every tape came with the copy of the trailer for the PlayStation game, but it was different because this game went through 3 iterations. The first iteration was a top-down shooter, like loaded, but that was not working out well. The second iteration was a Resident Evil clone, basically, with survival horror elements and everything. And you see screenshots of this. That's what it was going to be. But then the team got reduced again and decided to actually do a third build, this time from first person. And that's when it all clicked. It was noticeable for being one of the early games to use the dual analog control scheme to have one stick be your movement, one stick be your looking. And it is known for being balls hard, but not because of the aliens, not because of the face huggers, not because of the underwater traps. No, it's because at one point you run into these pulse rifle wielding maniacs that work for the general, and they will shred your health and like before you can turn around and say what the fuck. In fact, I'm pretty sure Alien Resurrection would make for a great video game nerd episode if he ever plays Resurrection. But bad chance of that happening. Who knows? Maybe he might do something for Romulus. Hopefully. But okay, but that's my piece on the Resurrection game. So, as you can probably guess from my raving of this movie, I still really enjoy it despite its shortcomings and despite some of the weird directions it took. But, hey, I love it all the same. And Derek, I think, while he doesn't downright hate this movie, I think he found it more enjoyable than 3 for the most part. And it has Winona Ryder and Joner, so yeah. Anyway, I think that's all we can touch on for this thing right now. So this is going to cap off May-lien for now, but we will return within the few days to finish off this whole retrospective. When we talk about the crossover between the 2 deadliest creatures in the universe. When we have the ultimate evolved survivor, the alien, taking on the ultimate hunter, the predator. in Alien versus Predator and the road it took to get there. So it had its highs and it definitely has its lows, especially with its sequels involved. But we'll talk about that for another time. I think I've rambled long enough about Resurrection to last a lifetime. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you want to add, Derek?
Nope.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty then. So in that case, this is Don't Got 79 signing off, aka Chris with my usual co-host Derek, aka Dark Neon.
I think I'll just give off this a salute,
Yeah.
a over the top, weird, bug-eyed salute.
Yeah, God, what was up with the general salute? He like had his jaw locked and his he looked like he just shat his pants while saluting.
It looked like he was going cross-eyed.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I've one more other detail I forgot to mention that's very funny, and Derek would be like, "Oh," is the fact that in the extended edition of this movie, but the extended edition of this movie doesn't really add much other than a few more flourishes. The only reason I really don't like watching that movie too much is because it changes the opening from that weird surreal blob, you know, malformations of the clones to some dude smashing a fly, looking at it the whole time, and spitting it out the window before the window's revealed to be the one of the towers on the Auriga. And it changes the music in that moment. And as I mentioned how much I love the music, I can't really stand it. Other than that, there's a few good character moments. But there's a bit where they mentioned the Weyland Yutani company because Ripley's remembering her memories and saying everyone in the company will die. And Ren says they were a Terran growth conglomerate that had military contracts, said that they fell during the corporate wars, bought out by Walmart.
Huh.
Yeah, so the evil mega corporation got eaten by a bigger fish, I guess.
Truth be told, I honestly would have thought that Amazon would have done the deed.
I don't think Amazon existed at that time, but I'm sure had that movie been made today, Amazon would have been the company that eat Weyland Yutani, I bet. Or the Big D, which now, funnily enough, owns the Alien franchise now. Which, does that make Call and Ripley and the Queen Disney princesses?
I think the better question is when are the Predators going to get off their asses and get in on that action?
Yeah. And, oh, before we go, because I mentioned Disney, we gotta mention the fact that this made Derek laugh, that Marvel now owns the license to the Alien and Predator comics, taking it from Dark Horse, after a long run, and they just announced a preview for their upcoming slate, which includes a Aliens versus Predator versus no Aliens versus Avengers, I think. And
Yeah.
you laughed saying those poor bugs. Every one of the Avengers is going to give them a hard time. But
To be fair, I did hear that they handled the Predator versus Wolverine comic pretty well.
that was actually
So
a good comic, yeah. I can't wait for that.
maybe it could make it work, or it'll just be a Marvel's cheeky way of having a 1,001 dumb ways to die for the xenomorphs.
Well, then again, we live in a day where the MonsterVerse and DC can cross over and make a hell of a crossover comic with, Godzilla versus Kong versus the Justice League. Which, that's some good shit right there. I saw some images from it. I mean, you got Supergirl talking to Kong, and Kong getting a little too feelsy, ends up getting backhanded by Supergirl. Like, I want to see that in an animated movie. Anyway, so I guess that's all we can talk about Resurrection. I know this is a little more rambly and more on me, but I'm pretty sure Derek will have lots of things, both good and bad, to say about our next talk when we talk about Aliens vs. Predator and its ill-fated sequel, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem.
Ugh.
So,
I'll bring the shit mop.
all right. So this is we're signing off, and thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll have a good one. All right. Let's see what June brings us. And good night, everybody.